Okay, go ahead.
Okay, today we're going to do a bird's stonefly. If you will look at the example in the book, it's pathetic. Lots of things in there that we are changing, things they have left out. Next year I hope to have that redone. They say use orange thread for the rib. It sinks into the dubbing and you can't even see it. So I think the copper wire works a lot better. It's a lot more visible. This is not a difficult pattern to tie. It's difficult because we have multiple materials, and that means you end up having multiple steps. So for those that have not tied this before, trust me, you want to watch the first time. And then when we do the second go around, I'll do it step by step, and we'll go really slowly. If you brought pencils and you're kind of keeping an eye on the directions in the book, you might want to jot down some notes on how we change it, because if you want to do this at home and you use just the booklet, you're probably going to get confused. I mentioned on the turkey shell, when we get to that point, we pass these two examples around. A lot of people will use head cement, but it just soaks up into that turkey shell, and it has no turkey, the model pattern in the turkey doesn't show through. Something you need to know before you use the turkey shell. I started off with, I don't think I brought any, with turkey tail feathers. I bought some clear lacquer. I lay the turkey feather out on a newspaper, and I lightly spray 2 coats on the front and 1 coat on the back of the feather. You have to let that dry. If you don't coat it, when you go to pick off 4, 5, 6 strands for your shell, it'll all come apart. And I'll show you when we get to that part of the fly how to carefully separate what you need, and it comes off just neat as a pin. So when we get to the second step, when I've gone through the second time, I've got a little note here, and I'm going to stick it up here on this board. There are 13 steps. Dave Barfield would have quit long ago and left. It's got more than 3 materials, and it's got more than 3 steps. So I'm going to put this up here so you can kind of refer to it. I'll put it up there so you can see it. And then that'll help you get through these steps.
It'll be out of focus, probably.
I'll refocus it by then. Okay, as you can tell, I've already put lead wrap on, and I put quite a few wraps of lead because this is going to bounce on the bottom, and there are a lot of materials. Some of it soaks up, some of it doesn't. So that's the first step, since we want this kind of bouncing off the bottom. And I've got my orange thread, and I'm going to kind of dam it up behind the lead. I'm going to go back to the bend and dam that up. Then I'm going to go through the lead. I'm going to go forward like we did on the fly last week. I'm going to leave some bare metal up there. I want to make sure that I don't crowd the eye on this fly also. And like last week, I'm going to build that thread up so it's pretty close to the level of my lead. And then I'm going to go back, and I'm going to let it hang right above the barb, right about where the bend is, and I'm going to get rid of my thread. Now, the first thing that we tie on are these little, they're called biots. There's enough here to tie multiple flies. We're going to need 2 of those for each fly. We've got some over here if you don't have it. And what I do, I just try to bend it up until I've got a couple of them. A biot is off the leading edge of a duck wing. I've got 2 of them separated here, Now I'm just going to tear that off. And I think I got two. We'll see. Oh, I think I only got one. One of them didn't. One of them must have slipped through.
Did you coat these?
Yes, those are all already lacquered. I'm going to get my second one. Now, if you look at these, they have a curve to them. You want the curve to form a V on the back. I have found it easier for me to tie them on one at a time. I'm going to lay that on the side where I've got it tied in. You can see where I just laid it on there. And I'm going to squeeze that. I'm going to hold that. And I'm just going to put a couple of wraps on, and I want to make sure it stays on the side. And I want that flare. You can see well, that's kind of hard to see. The flare is out this way. So I'm going to try, and if you can go ahead and tie that on your lead, it won't make any difference. I'm going to trim off that ugly tip because that's a little bit more bulk than I want. And I'm going to make sure it stays on the side. Right now you can still manipulate it about how you want it. The length of this ought to be about a gap and a half, the gap of the hook plus about a half of it. Okay? Now I've got one of them on. Now I'm going to make sure the other one flares the opposite direction. And the tricky part here is you want them equal length. So I got that a little bit too long. I'm going to try and get it as close to the equal length. I'm working so far from my vise that I have trouble with this. Okay, that's pretty good. I've got them on that side. I'm going to bring that down. I'm going to kind of wrap it easily so that. Okay, now that's about as good as I'm going to get it. My vise is in the way. Next thing we're going to tie on is our copper wire. If you have a piece of copper wire and you're trying to straighten it out with your fingers and you feel a knot, don't put that knot anywhere on your fly because it's liable to break right there when you pull it tight. So I'm going to take my wire, I'm going to put that kind of along the side, a couple of easy wraps to get it going, and then I'm going to wrap back to just where I tied in the others, the buyouts. Okay? Everybody with me so far? Next, we've got to put some dubbing on. I ask you that if you have dubbing wax, bring your dubbing wax. I've got a little wad of dubbing here, much more than I'm going to need. And I'm going to try and get some dubbing wax on my thread. Okay. What you guys have is hare's mask. Kind of dark. I don't know what I just grabbed this. I don't know what it is. It's got some guard hairs in it, and like I've told you before, if you think you have enough dubbing, you probably have too much. I'm going to spread this out and hope you can see it. See how fine I am spreading that out? And if you got the dubbing wax on your thread, you should be able to just sort of lay that on. I've got some down here that's way too thick. And I'm going to just kind of twist that counterclockwise with my fingers. And you don't want big fat clumps of this stuff. It'll build up your body a lot quicker than you want. And if you have too much on, you can't add more, and it's very difficult to take it away. So you see I've got not much dubbing on my thread. So I'm going to start wrapping that. I want to make sure I've covered up my copper wire, my orange thread, and if you have a small amount of dubbing on, you can always add more if you need. I kind of taper it a little bit. I get it bigger up front more than I do. I forgot to cut that off. I'm going to get rid of that. Okay. And I'm just bringing that forward, and I want to bring it up about halfway. I need just a tad more dubbing. I almost had enough, but not quite. So I'm putting just a slight amount of dubbing on there again. Slide that up where I need it. Okay, and I'm going to half hitch that right about there. Okay? I'm going to get my bobbin out of the way. Now the next step, we're going to wrap the copper wire forward. I counter wrap it because I went forward when I put it on. I'm going to counter wrap it so it kind of loops over those in kind of an X pattern. I try to make my wraps equally distant apart. And I'm so far from my work I can't tell what I'm doing. I'm going to have to break down and get my magnifier out here. Okay, I've got it up to where the dubbing was, and I'm going to cut that off. If you're using scissors, I'm going to use the very back end of the scissors, which I use the least on my good scissors. Okay? Okay. Now, the next thing we got to tie in is the turkey. And see if I can show you how to do this. Okay. I've got my turkey wing, and I'm going to make a 90-degree angle to the wing. You see, I'm not following the stem. I want a 90-degree angle to the barbs on that turkey wing. And I cut in, I think I've got about what I need. Now, notice I have the top side and I've got the bottom side. The bottom side will be dull and it will be a little bit concave. I'm going to tie that with the bottom side down. I'm going to lay that over and I'm going to gently try to squeeze that together. So when I wrap it over, it's going to be even on both sides. And now you still can move that around a little bit. So I've got it centered now on my hook, okay? Then the last thing we wrap forward is the first thing we tie on. I've got a piece of hackle here someplace. Okay. I'm going to tie my hackle on. And I've just got a little piece of hackle. I'm going to lay it the pointy end. I'm going to leave a little bit of stem if I can. And I'm going to make sure I've got that cinched up really tight so that when I start wrapping, I don't want it to slip out. So I've got that cinched in very tight. Now the last material we have to add is the peacock curl. Okay? And I'm going to grab, 3 or 4 strands. If I've got nice full herl, if I've got real skimpy, this is not the best, but I think I can make it work. And just like last week, I do not want to use any of this stuff at the end that has no sheen to it. So I'm going to whack that off. And I'm going to tie my peacock herl in just short of the eye. Tying it in. And I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to bring my thread forward. I'm going to half hitch that and get it out of my way. Now, I don't know that I mentioned this last week. This peacock herl, if you try to wrap it without twisting, it separates. If you have your hackle pliers with you, pull those strands tight, grab the top of them with your hackle plier, and now you can twist with your hackle plier, and it twists near the hackle plier before it does the bottom. But I think you can see it starting to twist. Now I'm ready to bring that forward, and you won't have any of your strands separate if you do the twist. So I'm going to build up a nice big peacock herl. Up, over, drop it, over, drop it, over, drop it. And then I'm going to snip that off. Now notice I still have quite a bit of space in front of behind the eye of the hook. We want that. We want that. Okay, I'm going to half hitch that again. And then I'm going to get my bobbin out of the way. Now I'm going to grab my hackle. And I'm going to bring that forward. I'm just going to wrap it through the peacock herl up toward the eye. And then I'm going to, same deal, over, drop it, over, drop it, over, drop it. And then I'm going to carefully come on, scissors. I swear I cannot see what I'm doing. All right. Now I've got a few little stragglers up there. Again, I'm going to make a couple insurance wrap because I don't want that hackle to come undone. And I'm going to half hitch that. Those little stragglers I can take care of later. All right. Now the final, next to final step, I'm going to take my turkey, I'm going to bring that forward, I'm going to grab it and hold it, and then I'm going to bring my thread, I'm going to get this out of my way, I'm going to bring this over, cinch that in, and now I can still have, I can manipulate that a little bit. I want it nice and level on there. Once I've got that on there good, then I'm going to trim that. And I'm going to see if I can't cheat a little bit and get rid of some of those without cutting my thread. I can get rid of more of that. I just grabbed a couple more. I'm going to get my head on here, then I'll address those stragglers. And I'm going to whip finish 2, 3, 4, 5. Pull it tight. And I'll do a couple more just to make sure. 2, 3. Okay. Now I can get rid of my thread. Trim that off real close. And I don't know if you can see, I still have some little hangers. I still have a few stragglers. So I'm going to try and carefully get rid of those. A really good tire probably wouldn't have any of those.
We're not complaining.
Okay. Now, that's looking pretty good, right? Now I'm going to get my UV goop. They didn't know what UV goop was at Cabela's?
No.
I don't know what else it's called. It's UV water repair is what I used to buy it at. But the key point in this last step is you don't want a gigantic glob of that stuff on there. You want a very thin coating on it. And you can spread it out. Okay? I'm just putting just a little bit of a coat on there. And I want enough that, I don't know if you can see, I don't have much on there at all. But I hope you can see that the color, and it's hard to tell. From my perspective, the color is of the modeling of the feather, the turkey feather, is still very apparent. And when we pass it around, you'll be able to see that too. I got a little bit of that stuff on my feathers. I'm going to get that off, and then I'm going to zap it with my UV light, and it should be soft to the touch, or hard to the touch now. And that is bird stonefly. In the book it's called bird stonefly brown. I just call it a bird stonefly. But pass that around if you want.
Like blue lover lying in the cave on my chest.